the B Plus Wrestling Podcast.
The Moose.
You might not be an A, but you are a B plus.
Check it out! Here we go! You wanna mess with us? Cause we're steady on the ground, steady on the ground. You wanna mess
Hello, and welcome to the Wrestling Landscape Podcast. I am your host, Lance Larson, and the Wrestling Landscape Podcast is the casual wrestling podcast, the informal wrestling podcast. And on today's episode, we are talking NXT and NXT UK. In the last week before NXT debuts on the USA Network. I guess I shouldn't say debuts, they did have a one-off. What was that, last December? The year before on USA. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. On today's episode, I am drinking birthday cake flavored vodka. You heard that right. But like a few episodes ago, I am shooting it instead of putting it over ice and drinking it. Because birthday cake vodka is not something I'm interested in sipping. So, cheers everybody. You can really taste the birthday. Okay. Now that that's out of the way, let's jump into business. NXT UK. From September the 11th, opened with an Imperium promo, which was fine, I guess. They had plenty of heat. Or I shouldn't say plenty. They had probably the most heat of the night. Started off with a tag team match between Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner, defeating a couple of job guys in Danny Jones and Harry Green. Now, before the match got underway, I don't know how or why, but Nigel McGuinness and Vic Joseph, the commentators, brought up the words cleansing and totalitarian with Imperium, and just from a team that has members from Germany, Austria, and Italy, using those terms is just uncomfortable. It's not something I would do. I think it's inappropriate and tasteless. Because it really seems like they're trying to intentionally hint at something, and that makes me uncomfortable. The match itself was fine, I guess. It was a little boring. I kind of expected more out of Bartel and Eichner. They're usually a little more entertaining, and I would have liked more out of this match. You gotta think that they are going to be tag team title contenders in the near future. I guess I don't really know how to define that, because who the hell knows anything about NXT UK's takeover schedule? How often that shit'll happen. I know Triple H did that interview with Newsweek recently, in which he talked about some of this stuff. He did talk about hopefully NXT going to 6 takeovers a year, and he hoped that NXT UK would have takeovers more often. I believe that's as specific as he got, so I hope they have takeovers more often too. More than twice a year, because I really liked both shows, and I'd like to see it more often. Plus, I really like watching wrestling in the afternoon. These UK shows start at like 1 or 2 p.m. for me on a Saturday. It's great. I love it. I don't know why. It's just a very nice, easy time to watch wrestling. When the WWE UK tournament happened to crown the first UK champion, it was a Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon consecutively, and it was lovely. I had a lovely time watching it in that time period. So I'd like more takeovers, not just because I like afternoon wrestling on the weekends, but because I like the shows, and they'd be fun to watch. Now, if I'm in WWE's shoes, I'm not running more takeovers, but I'm not in WWE's shoes, I'm watching these shows, so I would like more. And who knows, I don't think they would get to this point, but I mean, if they do 6 NXT proper takeovers a year, And if they could get the UK takeovers to even 3 a year, but I think 4 would be even better, that's almost one every month, and that's about one every 5 weeks. If there's 4 UK takeovers and 6 NXT proper takeovers. Like, that's great. And that's exactly how I'd space it out, too. To be honest. Just have one every 5 weeks. Do takeover proper, NXT UK, takeover proper, NXT UK, takeover proper, NXT UK, takeover proper, takeover proper. I didn't count that right, but you know what I mean. And that's how I do it, just one every 5 weeks. Sounds excellent to me. But again, my convenience is not going to be considered when they're making these decisions. Anyway, another thought I had watching this match is, are we going to get Imperium versus the Undisputed Era at War Games? They're both 4-person teams. WXW, where several of the Imperium guys kind of got their start. Maybe start's the wrong word, but got big on the indies in WXW. I know that company has done a War Game style match before. Walter has been in it. Wouldn't be terribly unfamiliar for those folks. Undisputed Era has obviously been in the last 2 NXT War Games. So it's not like those guys are unfamiliar for it. I think that could work out. Now, the only problem is they're 2 heel teams. But let's be real. The UE gets plenty of cheers, and I think it would be very easy for just that one feud to have them be kind of tweeners. And be the baby faces in the feud. Not make actual a face turn, but just in that feud, be the face-leaning tweeners. I don't think that would be that difficult. And then the feud's over, they can go right back to being heels, which I'm fine with. Listen, despite all of the old school preferences I have when it comes to pro wrestling, I'm actually very fine with someone who's like a babyface or a heel for one feud to like start leaning the other way just for that feud, and then when it's over, go right back to where they were. I don't know why, I'm fine with it. Like, I've watched G1 matches in the past where like babyface Okada is working heel tonight, and it works. Babyface Tanahashi is just working heel tonight, and it works. I'm fine with it. Doesn't hurt the characters. It's just like, with this opponent, on this night, I'm acting this way because they're bringing this out of me. I'm okay with it. Next, we got an announcement that Sid Scala will be going one-on-one with Cassius Ono, as they say it across the pond, in a British rounds match. Now, listen. In the history of pro wrestling, there have been timed round matches in lots of places, not just Britain. So before we go any further, please don't think that Britain's the only place that had these kind of timed round matches. They've been other places as well, including Australia. And in fact, a lot of the origins of Australian pro wrestling are rounded matches. But, of course, this is NXT UK. They're going to call it the British Rounds match. I am looking forward to this because I am fascinated to watch this style of match. I think this is a fresh and unique thing to do. I think Ono is incredibly knowledgeable and talented enough to pull off a match like this in 2019. At the same time, I am cautiously excited because this just seems like something where a lot of things can go wrong. It's not crazy to me that this match could suck. I really hope it doesn't. I want it to be great. At the same time, I'm not going to be terribly surprised if it does suck. Just because it's a unique stip these days. Don't know how well to get over. Especially sometimes these UK crowds for TV aren't exactly up for everything. Sometimes they're a little quiet. Like they were on this episode. So I'm cautiously excited for that next week. Next, on this week's show, we had Jordan Devlin defeating Ashton Smith. which makes sense. Devlin is the more pushed commodity. Whenever Smith shows up, he's really just there to put someone else over. This match started kind of boring, and I think it felt more boring than it was because of how quiet the crowd was. But picked up as it went along, crowd got more into it, and it finished very, very strong. Devlin gets the win, which is the right call. I wonder when/if they're going to do more with Devlin in terms of getting closer to a real title challenge. Like, I know he challenged Walter, what would that have been, 3 months ago? I can't even remember. But that was a TV one-off. I don't think there was anyone that seriously thought Devlin was going to win that. I know I didn't. And I had speculated at the time that, not even speculated, because I didn't think it would happen, and I said as much. I had hoped at the time that was going to start like, a 9-month thing for Devlin, where he's like, I challenged Walter, I lost, I'm not up to snuff, I've got to go back to basics and rebuild myself, and kind of start this like slow face turn for Devlin, where he just spends the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months working his ass off, getting wins, progressively over more and more over talent, till he's finally ready to challenge Walter again, and they do a takeover in Ireland, where he slays Walter. In no way, shape, or form does it look like they're going that way. But Devlin is absolutely talented enough to be a top guy on this brand, and it kind of frustrates me that he's not treated as such. So I hope one day, I know he's pushed at as an upper mid-carder, kind of. I hope that one day he gets a real legitimate top guy run on this brand. Or even more so, he gets up to a bigger brand and is treated like a star. Now, if he is moved up to a bigger brand, in NXT proper, he'd be fine. But if he ever gets up to Raw or SmackDown, he is going to be treated like a joke because of his size. So I almost don't want him to make it to Raw or SmackDown. But in NXT proper, he'd be fine. In NXT UK, he'd be treated fine, but the problem with... in 205 Live, he'd be treated fine. But obviously, we all know the detriments of being on the 205 Live brand. So, I don't wish that for him either. I either want him to be a top guy on UK, or just fucking move him over to NXT proper. So he can be on cable TV here in the States, get his name out there a little more, hopefully can get a better spot, either in the company, or in a different company when his contract runs out. Devlin's super talented. You don't think if this motherfucker gets moved to NXT and gets over, and he lets the contract run out, AEW wouldn't want him? Ring of Honor would want him too. So would Impact, if those companies are still around. Jackie, Impact's never going away. I loved all of the jokes on Twitter this week about Impact just never going to die. So, anyway, Devlin gets the win. Next, we had the return of Tegan Nox as she won an incredibly brief squash. Why can't I think of the word squash for a second? Jesus. As she won an incredibly brief squash match over Shax. Perfect return match for Nox. It was 3 moves. It was 20 seconds. She comes back looking like a super talented performer. So, I didn't even think of a squash match in the return, or at least a squash match that brief. I expected this match to be a squash, but 2 minutes, not 20 seconds. Gets the win. Very smart. But then, the champ, the UK Women's Champ, Kaylee Ray, comes out and says, don't steal my spotlight, blah, blah, blah. And Nox is like, hey, I'm ready to fight anytime, anywhere. And Ray just kind of walks off. This, in my opinion, is too soon after Nox's return to be tied up with the champ. I think they should take a slower approach and build to that. This is too much too soon for me. She won a 20-second squash this week. In 2 weeks, have her win a 2-minute squash. 2 weeks after that, maybe beat someone that's on the card, but a little lower on the card. Maybe she gets to win over Nina Samuels. Or Isla Dawn. 2 weeks later, gets to win over Nina Samuels. 2 weeks later, gets to win over Ginny. And Jazzy's upset about that, so 2 weeks later, she gets to win over Jazzy. Then maybe you can start thinking about a title run for her. But that's 10, 12 weeks away, 5, 6 wins away, in my opinion. I think this is too soon. But I don't see their future plans, so I can't necessarily make a judgment on that until I see it happens. Maybe she'll win the title in a month, and it'll be over as fuck, and I'll say I was dead wrong. We'll see. I also hope they don't screw up this character, because her story as a babyface is so easy as fuck to tell. She's had 2 Mae Young Classics ripped away from her because of injury, and she's finally come back. That screams easy sympathy. Tell her story with vignettes, get over as a sympathetic babyface, and just have her win. That's how to handle, like, the first 3 months of her coming back. And then I'd worry about a title program for her. But what do I know? I don't run a territory.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey guys, just a reminder, if you want to hear all of these wonderful B Plus podcast episodes completely ad-free, make sure you head over to Patreon or Podbean, where we are the featured podcast this week. You can subscribe for as little as $1 a month up to $10 a month, where anything you want to help us with, it really helps out. It's going to help us grow the site. It's going to help us redesign some things, and everything that we get through this and through the advertising as well is all going straight back into the podcast so that we can get Aussie Graps out there for the rest of the world to hear about, for the rest of the world to see, so we can grow this mission of watch global, support local, and build indie wrestling. So if you want to be a part of that and get some really cool rewards like call-in shows, bonus episodes, ad-free like I mentioned, then head over to patreon.com/theb+ and subscribe today. Hey everyone, just want to take a second to tell you about one of our new sponsors, OUTBREAK NUTRITION. OUTBREAK NUTRITION are creating supplements for survival, sharper minds, quicker reflexes, all the energy you need to take your performance to the next level, whether that be on the field, in the gym, on the gaming field. That's right, they have specifically designed gaming supplements as well to help you focus on those late night sessions. They even sell coffee, you guys, at OUTBREAK NUTRITION. You can get coffee pods, you can get coffee beans, you can get supplements for the bedroom as well if you want to enhance your performance there. These are performance enhancing supplements for every aspect of your life, specifically designed by gamers, for gamers, to stay fit and healthy in the gym, to stay sharp and focused on the game, and to dominate in all areas of life. So check out OUTBREAKNutrition.com, and for being a listener of our podcast, they will give you 10% off your order when you enter the code B+. That is BPLUS at checkout. So make sure, if you want to stay on top of your game, if you want to take your performance to the next level, OUTBREAKNutrition.com, enter the code B+ at checkout.
Next, we have a Noam Dar press conference, which I actually thought this was kind of funny. Normally, this is something I would kind of think is stupid, but I thought this was funny. The Trent 7 stuff, in particular, I thought was clever and entertaining. I hope this means Noam Dar and Trent 7 have a feud going on. I am convinced that's what that means. And I look forward to their match. I think they'll have a good match. I think they're both good performers. In the main event, we had Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster retaining the NXT UK Tag Team Championships over the Grizzled Young Veterans. This was a good match, but with a cold crowd. I really liked this match. I thought the crowd was kind of quiet. Quieter than this match deserved, in my opinion. I'm also not at these tapings. I have no idea in which order they were taped, so I don't know what's come before it. I don't know how long the crowd's been there. So you can't necessarily blame a crowd, because I don't know their situation necessarily. I thought this match deserved more reaction than the crowd was giving them. But I'm just a lazy ass sitting at home eating pizza watching it, so. I think retaining is a good idea for Andrews and Webster. I think if they had lost it right back, I think that would have hurt them quite a bit. And it would have been hard to recover on this brand with that happening. This means that they're at least going to get somewhat of a real title reign. Gibson and Drake will be fine without the titles. They're a very overact, and honestly, they can get the titles back in 6 months. They'll be just fine. I hope they're not forgotten about. I hope they're still on TVs and hopefully takeovers, depending on how many we get of those as time goes on. So just because they lost the titles, I don't want them to be completely off TV. But Andrews and Webster retaining is a smart idea. Gallus, in my opinion, would have been a great second set of challengers for the babyface Welshman, but because of that triple threat, that match is kind of watered down. So for the third time on the wrestling landscape, I'm going to complain about the NXT UK Tag Battle match at TakeOver being a three-way. Should have just been Webster and Andrews challenging Gibson and Drake. Don't know why Gallus was in it. You could have still done this rematch and then have Gallus challenge next, and that match would have still been very fresh. So I think Gallus should challenge next regardless, even though they were in that triple threat. Because while I think it does water it down, how much does it really water it down? So I think it was a poor idea, but it's one of those poor ideas that, only has a minimal, I shouldn't say minimal, doesn't have a big enough effect to where it's going to change things. Especially on the brand in WWE that is, valued by Vince McMahon the fourth most. Or the fifth most, maybe. So, Gallus should still be the next challengers, and then I think Imperium can be after them, and Imperium can win those titles. So, you got 2 title programs for the tag belts upcoming. If that's the way they do it, that's how I would do it. That's what would make sense to me based on what I saw, and what I have seen lately. So, we will see. But that was NXT UK. Moving on to NXT proper, which, for the first time in a long time, I was able to watch live. The show, not live, but you know what I mean, at 8/7 Central. The show opened with Damian Priest and his long-ass entrance, which is so long it makes me want to get on my phone in the middle of it, defeating Boa, whom we saw in the NXT Breakout tournament, and he lost in the first round. So, I think Boa looked okay in this match, with a couple timing issues, but overall I think he looked pretty good. So I look forward to his career with curiosity. I would like to see him succeed. Priest is a curious fellow in NXT. I'm very curious to know what the long-term plans are for him on this brand. Now, with the show expanding to 2 hours every week, there's obviously much more room for him. And I think guys like him, Keith Lee, all the other awesome talents they have, like Jordan Miles, Cameron Grimes, basically everyone in the Breakout tournament, along with all the other favorites. Hopefully Kushida, too. As many of the British Strong Style guys they bring over, all those folks, there's more room for them. But I wonder if they ever see Priest in that NXT title picture. I think he's more of a North American title guy, and that's more where he'll hang around. Challenge for it some, win it some, but, not terribly often. But we'll see. I wonder where Levesque sees him, and I'm very interested to see how he's booked going forward. Dream Strong for the North American title is set for next week on the USA Network. That will be a good match. I can't imagine how it won't be. And probably smart to put that on their first USA show. After that, there was an ad for NXT, which kind of blew my mind. The ad opened with the sentence, in writing, no one was speaking, it was written on the screen. If you want no BS, this is for you. That was the ad for NXT on USA. What kind of psychology goes into that ad? What are you saying about your other brands? Because clearly, this ad was targeting the disgruntled fans, the lapsed fans, the upset fans that are sick and tired of the quote-unquote BS on the fucking main roster. So this ad starts with, if you want no BS, this is for you! What the fuck is that saying about this company's main roster when the company itself is producing this fucking ad? This is a fucked up company! God almighty! Next we have Johnny Gargano coming out. I thought this segment took too long. But the crowd was into it, so... Again, what do I know? Comes out, teasing like he's announcing he's gonna leave. Shane Thorne interrupts. Got some good heat. And was like, okay, Johnny, just take your bow and take a walk. Johnny super kicks in and says, psych, motherfucker, I'm staying. Obviously, he didn't say psych, motherfucker. You know what I mean. So, I am assuming, / believe I heard from spoilers, that there's a Gargano-Thorne match coming up. I think that would be a good match. I think both men are talented. I think Thorne is underrated. I think him and Mikey Nichols, whatever the fuck Mikey Nichols' NXT name was, were a good tag team in NXT. And I think them not winning the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic that one year hurt them, and I think they really could have been top contenders, and have had would have had incredibly entertaining matches as a babyface with Undisputed Era on takeovers, and I'm kind of bummed we missed out on that. Next, we got Johnny not moving up to Raw or SmackDown, I wonder how much of that decision was influenced by NXT moving to USA. Because obviously NXT wants all of its stars. Johnny is clearly one of the top guys on NXT. So I wonder how much of that decision was based on the USA TV deal. Next, we got a Forgotten Sons promo video, which is mind-boggling that anyone sees value in this trio or this gimmick. Next, we got Pete Dunne defeating Angel Garza, which was a good match. I really enjoy both guys. They're both entertaining in their own ways. And Dunne won, like I said. I wonder if Garza should have won. It really seems to me that Pete Dunne's going to be one of the top guys on NXT, especially moving forward on the USA Network, which makes sense. He is incredibly talented and is legitimately one of the best workers the company has under contract. But Garza's a newer face. He is insanely charismatic. And I just wonder if the win would have been more beneficial going to him. And if that fresh face, as one of the higher up guys on NXT, would have been a better idea. Time will tell. But I wonder if Garza being positioned just as highly or higher than Dunne moving forward wouldn't be the smarter move. But obviously, Dunne being a top... There's no reason both guys can't be top guys. Like, Garza can win the next 3 weeks in a row, and it's not like this loss will hurt him that much. Especially if Dunne is continually being positioned strongly on the brand, which I assume he will be. So this is by no means a critique or think they're burying Garza, because they're most certainly not, especially if he bounces back strongly in the coming weeks. But just wondering if they wanted to get that process going of making Garza a higher up guy on the brand. And if it would have been more useful to have Garza get the win. Because I think Dunne's going to be okay if he would have lost this. Whereas Garza losing feels like, ooh, so that's where they see Garza. Again, this has not Vince running this brand. Yet. Maybe. We'll see. So it's not like Garza loses to Dunne and it's just like, oh, that's where they see Garza and that's where he's staying. So, I don't think that. I just wonder if it would have been more beneficial the other way. So that's that. Next, we had a Street Profits promo, which I enjoyed. I think those guys are very entertaining and charismatic, which is not a unique opinion, as a lot of people think that. So it really seems we're getting a rematch of Profits and Undisputed Era for the tag titles coming up. We will see when that takes place. Next, we had Cameron Grimes defeating Raul Mendoza. Good match. Both guys are talented. Obviously, Grimes got the win. He's the newer guy that is going to get a bigger push than Mendoza. So him getting the featured win makes all the sense in the world. But it also makes me sad that Mendoza will seemingly never, ever break it out of job guy territory on NXT. breaks my heart. I really like the guy. I think he's really entertaining. I feel like the Full Sail crowd likes him. I just don't think they will ever move him out of that, which is a shame. But I enjoy Cameron Grimes. Good performer. Look forward to him on NXT as well. Next, we had a segment that ended with Candice LeRae being added to the number one contenders match next week on the USA Network. Winner of that number one contenders match gets a shot at Shayna Baszler for the title. Candice being added made it a 4-way. And William Regal also talked about if Rhea Ripley wins in the main event next, she will be added to that number one contenders match and make it a 5-way. Keep that in mind as we talk about this next match. Because Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley had an entertaining match that the crowd got really into that ended with Shayna winning via DQ. So Rhea threw away her number one contender match opportunity because she got pissed. So they were having an entertaining match. Rhea was getting over as a babyface. Shayna's goons came out. Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke. Duke slid her a steel chair. Shayna went to hit Rhea with it. Rhea caught it, hit Shayna with a chair, and Rhea got DQ'd. Now, the finish got over. The crowd was behind Rhea kicking ass, which was interesting. Because if that happened, if this exact same match happened on the main roster, the crowd is booing. This happened on Raw or SmackDown, or worse, a pay-per-view. This crowd is booing. But Full Sail was behind this. Full Sail was behind Rhea kicking ass. So I can only criticize it so much because the live crowd was behind it. However, it makes Rhea look dumb, in my opinion. Throwing away a number one contenders opportunity like that. Obviously, they are saving this finish for a later date. Maybe I shouldn't say obviously. That's what it would make sense to me. That's how I would best capitalize on this finish moving forward, is that there is going to be a title match between these two at a later date. If they don't do that, I do not see the point in this finish or this match. Or why Rhea just couldn't have won, been added to the number one contenders match, and just not won nor ate the pin. Gets her over tonight, gets her featured next week, and she doesn't have to eat the pin. When I heard Regal said that, how is that not the logical step from this? I don't understand. But like I said, it got over with the live crowd. Guess I don't know how the TV watchers felt, but I can really only speak for myself in this. So I'm assuming, based on this feud and her being positioned with Shayna first, and someone else pointed this out a week ago. I'm sure other people did. I can't. Maybe Voices of Wrestling, I'm not sure. Maybe Dave Meltzer talked about how Rhea is apparently a babyface in this brand because she was paired with Baszler first, who is clearly the heel in this. Maybe it was Keller. I can't remember. I consume too much wrestling media. And so it looks like Rhea is just going to be a babyface on NXT going forward, which is fine. I think working as a kick-ass babyface will work for her. And the show ended with an Undisputed Era promo, with the four of them standing there, with the three of them with their belts, and Strong without a belt, talking about how he will beat Dream next week for the North American title, and Cole talking about how the prophecy of all of them dripping with championship gold will be fulfilled. Fine way to end. I think I would have preferred the show ending with the match. Because I just think that puts more importance and emphasis on Ripley. But whatever. I was fine ending with the promo. And it was an Undisputed Era promo. Nothing special. Enjoyable for what it was. So, I would say a thumbs up NXT show for me. Thumbs... Middle? No, I'd go thumbs up for NXT UK. It took me a second to think about it. I literally flipped the page and had to look at my notes again. Thumbs up episode from NXT UK for me as well. Although it took some thought to land on that thumbs up decision. Next week's the big week. NXT goes to 2 hours. First hour in USA, second hour on the NXT network. the NXT network, the WWE network. So we'll see. It's an important week. Next week, I might wait until Thursday to even record this episode, because I might want to wait and see what the viewership was and talk about that before I record. So, the Wednesday Night Wars are starting next week, people. They're starting next week. This shit's getting started ahead of October the 2nd. Things are getting going. In fact, I'll probably name next week's episode for the first time the Wednesday Night Wars, which is what I will name every NXT/AEW show moving forward. So I'll probably start that next week. Anyway, this has been all things NXT for maybe the last time, if I'm just doing the Wednesday Night Wars every week. I have been your host, Lance Larson, on the Wrestling Landscape podcast, which is featured on the B Plus Podcast Network. Thank you so much for listening, and do take care.